everything is still the same. Even though I feel the sun, I can only see the rain. I hitch a ride, come, let us fly over Egypt and find peace in our mind while denying our demons, my life.
Hi, I'm Derek Ashong, and you are now in the stream. What you just heard is Fly Over Egypt by The Narcissist, the song he created to mark the anniversary of the Egyptian Revolution. Today, we're going to look at the future of that country, 1 year after the uprising began in Tahrir Square.
Cemeteries where we buried our feelings for people we visit rarely. The television told me we living in scary times.
Now, our digital producer, Ahmed Shahabaldin, is here as always, looking out for your live feedback. Tweet him using the hashtag AJStream. Joining him on the couch is Maged Gabra, co-founder of the Egyptian Initiative to Protect the Gains of the Revolution, an organization that advocates for civil society. Maged, welcome.
Hi, I'm happy to be with you.
Oh, it's a real pleasure to have you here. As always, we tell you that this show is all about you. And remember, you can stay in touch with the stream on Google+. Add us to your circles. Check out our page. We're going to be posting updates there all the time. And we're using a Google+ Hangout today in particular. Before we jump into the discussion of Egypt, here's Ahmed with a story that was sent to us from our online community.
Thank you, Derek. When Egyptians began their uprising 1 year ago, women were on the front lines, mobilizing both in the streets and online. Now, since then, female protesters from Tahrir Square have been abused, publicly beaten, and subjected to virginity tests. Many of these assaults were documented online, including this infamous image, or now infamous image, of security forces undressing the woman now known as Blue Bra Girl. Now, despite these challenges, women are still playing a key role in today's events in Egypt. Tariq Shalabi on Twitter tweeted this from Tahrir. He says, "I see almost more women than men." And Ahmed Ammar said, "The louder voices are all feminine. Long live Egyptian girls and women." And Sarah Topol on Twitter posted this photo. As you can see, various women there. And if I scroll up, she writes, "More even mix of men and women in my march now in Du'i, which is a neighborhood in Cairo, than I've seen in ages." And we also have Aaron Cunningham writing this, "Men forming a human change around women marchers. Pretty sure it's symbolic as women are leading some of the loudest chants." Now, just to give you a sense of what that human chain looks like, this is one of the images that's circulating online. You can see the women gathering in the middle and that gap of men around her. Now, or them rather. Now, despite calls by some Egyptians on Twitter, like Yusuf right here, saying to all the men participating in demonstrations around the country, protect your fellow women from sexual harassment, not everyone feels safe. Hafsa Halawa wrote this. She says, "Sexually harassed, suffocated, and an almost out stampede getting in and out of Tahrir today. Men will never respect women in this country." Of course, here at the stream, we're looking at Egypt today, so tweet us your thoughts using the hashtag AJStream, and you could wind up in the stream.
My name is Adela Ladawi. I'm an Egyptian student here in Washington, D.C. I'm very proud of my country and what my fellow Egyptians have done. The road is still long. There will be many more obstacles, but we are moving in the right direction, and I believe soon we'll see a democratic Egypt that will flourish in the Middle East.
Now, what started with a few grew until tens of thousands and then millions gathered in Tahrir Square, all focused on the overthrow of Egyptian President Hosni Mubarak. Let's take a look at some footage. 1 year later, free and fair elections have been held. The lower house of parliament is in place, and with an exception for, quote, thuggery, Egypt's military rulers lifted the country's state of emergency law, which had been in place some 30 years. But many of the bloggers and activists who led the uprising say that the work of the revolution remains undone. Let's take a look actually at some of the comments that we've seen from people on the ground.
المصريين نازلين يوم 25 لأن المصريين عايزين مصر جديدة.
نازلين لأن في ثورة أجهضت وثورة اختطفت وثورة تم الالتفاف عليها والتحايل عليها، وبالتالي احنا نازلين لاستكمال هذه الثورة.
علشان أهداف الثورة لم يتحقق من أهداف الثورة إلا هدف واحد، وهو عزل ومحاكمة حسني مبارك، ومحاكمة حسني مبارك بين قوسين حواليها شكوك كثيرة جدا.
كل مؤسسة في مصر فيها مبارك صغير بيحكمها، ما حصلش تطهير، ما حصلش تغيير، وبدل ما يبقى فيه خير وعدالة اجتماعية والثروة بتاعت بلدنا تتوزع أكتر لأن الفلوس بتتهرب لبره.
So, is today a day of celebration or one of protest? And what does the future hold for Egypt? Joining us to discuss this right now from Cairo is Gigi Ibrahim. She's a well-known Egyptian blogger. She blogs under the title The Angry Egyptian. Gigi, welcome back to the stream.
Hi, welcome. How are you?
Very well, thank you. It's great to have you back with us again. And I just wanted to start with the obvious question. What does today signify in your mind?
Today signifies that our revolution is continuing. It's not a day of celebration. It's a day of demonstration to pressure, basically, the officials to step out of power, to tell them that our revolution is going strong, and we're not going to stop until all of our demands are met.
Well, we've got a lot of people from our community having lots of comments on this topic. Let's jump right into them.
Yeah, Gigi, many people echoing what you're saying. Hurriya Akhdar saying SCAF was always the power behind the throne in Egypt. Rather than support January 25th's goals, they sought to protect their own self-interests. We also have Sarah Rashid right here saying SCAF can still use draconian measures to crimes committed by thugs, or as Derek mentioned, the thuggery, a term loosely defined that can apply to anyone that's defiant. And Magid, this question for you, or a comment that came in from Egypt, from Nihal. Let's listen in right here.
Hi, my name is Nihal Ahmed, and I'm an Egyptian American calling from Michigan, and I believe that the Egyptian revolution is unfinished because the SCAF continuously represents the interests of the old regime, and because they are continuously trying to consolidate their power. And I believe that the revolution will be complete once the civilian council takes control of the transition to democracy without the oversight of the SCAF.
So she is taking SCAF to task there. Do you agree with her statement?
I believe that ending the emergency law is not right. I mean, having a small excuse that thuggery is an exception is the same that Mubarak did before, that when he said that emergency law will end except in the case of terrorism and drug dealing, which is the same. A police officer can suspect any person in the street in case he is revolutionary, right. And he says that you are a thug, and then he has an extra constitutional rights over him. So he can drag him to a police station, he can beat him, he can do many things.
So you're saying not much has changed,
no,
even though they've released 3,000 people who were in jail? Well, 2,000, 1,900, but also an additional 1,000 who had been imprisoned before, correct?
As far as I know, it's only 2,000.
Okay.
But there are organizations said that at least 12,000, if we put the 2,000 out, so at least 10,000, maybe more, are in prisons because of the military trials.
So, Gigi, let's get your thoughts on that front. Given this, what they're saying is the lifting of the state of emergency law, do you believe that that will change the way the SCAF and the police forces interface with the people?
We're under military rule. That is a dictatorship. We are being tried in military courts. We have Mubarak general ruling the country. I don't know what lifting of emergency law, even with the exception of thuggery, can still protect our freedom. I mean, this is nonsense. It doesn't mean anything. It was only put out the day before January 25th, just trying to calm the public, to have them not go out on the streets, when in fact nothing really has changed. Even them lifting the law, you can still be military tried, and they can still, if they want to arrest you or subject you to any kind of summoning or arrest because of your political views, they can do it that under whatever title they can choose, and they can still choose to do it through emergency law.
Okay, let's go to our Google+.
Yeah, we have many questions coming in on Google+. Let's go to Omar Tawfiq. Omar?
Hi, Ahmed. My question is, Mohammed al-Baradi came out today in the Associated Press and basically said that it wasn't a top priority to get the military to go back to their barracks, and rather that it was putting together a viable democratic constitution. What I wanted to know was, where do you see the fronts, the major fronts of the revolution being in the halls of parliament or on the streets of Tahrir?
Magid, what would your answer be to that?
The struggle between the parliament and the street, we still cannot figure out because the parliament just started 2 or 3 days ago, and it will be rushing if we judge the parliament now. We're still hoping that the parliament will be on the streets agenda, on the revolution agenda. The first parliament session or the second parliament session, they start to discuss the rights of the martyrs and those who were injured in the revolution. Hopefully they will go on the right direction. When I was seeing this yesterday, I remember when the SCAF took power and they said that we honor the martyrs, but they didn't do this in reality. They had a different path. So we cannot judge now. We hope that the parliament will be the voice of the revolution. But
so this is an interesting point, actually, Gigi. I'd love to get your thoughts on it, because the parliament is dominated by the Muslim Brotherhood and also by the Al-Nur party, the Salafist party. But these weren't the groups that seemed to spawn the revolution. It seems that many of the activists that began it have been sidelined. Do you believe that these groups will be an effective representation for the country? And how will they bridge the gap between those two forces?
Many people are kind of fanatic and kind of scared the fact that the parliament has the majority of Islamists. But to me, it comes to no surprise. I mean, they were the majority of the opposition, anyways, under Mubarak regime, and they had the sufficient structure to run and win elections. So it's normal that they have gotten the majority. But the parliament and the revolution don't necessarily oppose one another. I mean, don't replace one another. The revolution will continue regardless of the composition of the parliament. It will go in the streets, it will mobilize, it will hold and expose the limitation of the parliament and what they can't do for the revolution, because obviously we're under military rule. I mean, there is no democracy under military rule, whether this parliament is composed of Islamist or socialist or even revolutionaries themselves. We're still subject to military rule, and the revolution will by the continuation of the revolution that will obviously make the demands met regardless of parliament or not. I mean, it has very limited power, and with the composition of it now, if you look at this, these groups have sided and allied with SCAF from day one. I mean, like, all the statements and their engagement in Tahrir has been very limited.
But Gigi, let me ask you on that front. You know, the youth movement only garnered about 2% in the elections. And so if the Al-Nur party, if the Freedom and Justice Party of the Muslim Brotherhood gained the majority of the votes, then are they perhaps more reflective of the interests and the voice of the people perhaps than your movement?
No, it doesn't really say anything about that. Like I said, they were already established and had the sufficient structure to mobilize as in elections and win seats. They had the funds, they had the publicity, the amount of money to run campaigns to win seats. This doesn't say that it replaces or minimizes the revolution and its demands. I mean, if you look in Tahrir today and all across Egypt, you have hundreds of thousands of people who are chanting, the downfall of the regime, down with Tantawi, end of military rule, and this, this also is a strong representation of the Egyptian people, that our revolution will continue despite and regardless of the composition of the parliament.
Gigi, you're right, perhaps, to point out that, the revolution might continue despite the parliament, but we've also seen, to be fair, that the Freedom Justice Party and others are starting to try and make coalitions or reach out to some liberal parties, and they're not necessarily siding or working directly with the Al-Nur party, the Salafist party, and many people are commenting about this online. Egyptianism saying on Twitter, both could easily work together, but the Freedom and Justice Party will voluntarily refrain from working with Al-Nur in order to win Western acceptance. We have Iba Abdel Fattah saying the Freedom Justice Party and Noor parties can agree tactically on certain issues out of pragmatism, but never strategically. So perhaps even though they do dominate the parliament, there will be a more fair representation of the broader Egypt you talk about being in the streets. And on this question, we have someone on Google+, we have Sharif Gaber with a comment and I believe a question. Sharif, go ahead.
Right. So as I've seen it, we've seen the Islamists, particularly the Muslim Brotherhood, playing both sides of the fence, siding with the revolution and against it whenever it's been convenient for them. Now with the way that they've kind of taken to entering parliament and the way that their rhetoric has changed against the street, I'm wondering if we should have any reason to trust them again in the future.
So Magid, he's asking, can we trust the Muslim Brotherhood to properly represent the interests of the Egyptian people in parliament?
Do we have a choice? I don't think now we have really choice. The Muslim Brotherhood are elected already, and we have to respect the people's wish, whether we like it or we don't like it. This is democracy, and we have to test how they will perform in the next parliament. So I don't think we have that option, but I agree with Gigi that the revolution should continue, whether the parliament be on our side or is not on our side.
Do you believe that the Muslim Brotherhood, the existing parliament, will protect the freedom of speech of these activists, of people like Gigi?
Maybe in some political in the political field, they may protect the freedom of speech, but my fear comes to the freedom of religion, the freedom of speech in the field of religion. And I guess that the freedom, the religious freedom will become less and less under this parliament of the majority of Islamists. And for, as I understand that the religious freedom is very related to democracy. So I think this is one of the threats to democracy transition in Egypt.
Ahmed.
Yeah, Magid, we actually have Sharif who's commenting on your answer to his question. Sharif, why don't you go ahead with your follow-up?
I mean, I think that the idea that this was a free and fair democratic election and that we have to just outright respect it is a bit ridiculous. I mean, on the one hand, I have a picture of the ballot boxes being trucked in through Tahrir on the day that riot police were beating the wounded of the revolution. You had 5 days, 120 hours of continuous assaults by police on revolutionaries, and then you had elections before that blood had even dried. 58 people or more were killed in Mohammed Mahmoud Street, and then they pushed through elections under these conditions, not to mention the fact that the parliament is entirely kind of subservient to the kind of whim of the military government. I mean, what respect do we need to have for this? Besides the fact that we're...
Perhaps, Sharif, I don't want to put words in your mouth. You meant the process of this being the first...
the process, sure.
It being the first free and fair election Egypt's had in decades.
I also have comments on these elections. I don't think that it's completely fair and free elections. I agree with what he said, and one of the things that was very interesting in this election that funds which will help the liberal parties and organizations were strictly prohibited by the SCAF. And for example, my organization, we were scared to have any fund to do our work because of what the SCAF is saying over and over in the media, while on the other hand, the Islamists are receiving hundreds of millions from the Gulf and Saudi Arabia to Islamize the society without any comment from the SCAF. So I cannot say, I don't agree with that it was fair and free election. It was a very biased election to Islamists, that the SCAF is judging the game, and the SCAF is biased to the Islamists, and many political analysts all over the world are suspecting that there is a share of power between the Islamists and the SCAF.
Gigi, let's get your thoughts on this. Do you believe that the SCAF will hand over power to the democratically elected parliament?
No, and this will never happen. I mean, first of all, the parliament will never accept it with its composition. The majority, the Islamists, they never came out and said that they would accept power. They're already allied with, SCAF on many occasions, and they respect the SCAF, and they even saluted SCAF, in the first day of session in parliament. So, neither parties want to do so. With only public pressure, really, will we make our demands met, and this will then put, just like we toppled Mubarak, the labor strikes and the public pressures in all of the universities and the squares and the factories and the institutions are what's going to bring SCAF down.
Ahmed.
It's interesting, Gigi. One thing we haven't spoken about, although we mentioned it briefly at the top of the show, is the role of women in society and also in the parliament. Sarah Rashid on Twitter saying the Islamist party or parties in Egypt will be forced to give rights to women or preserve women's rights because of the potential for another revolution in Egypt, presumably if they don't. Now, this revolution in no small way was, led in part by women. And as you know, you're a woman yourself and a revolutionary. With women only receiving 1% of the vote in parliament, do you have any faith that this comment by Sarah Rashid is true? Will they preserve and leverage the rights of women?
I mean, women's rights is part of our revolution. When the revolution spoke about justice and equality and social, equality and so on, these are all principles that would, make women's rights possible in Egypt. But with military power, with military rule in power, and with all the kind of repression that women are still facing and being targeted for being women in demonstrations like we've seen in the past clashes, I think the road is still far, and that's very reflective in obviously, women in powerful positions. You see women being in the front lines, sacrificing so much. They have been so militant in this revolution. All of the cadres and really central activists have been women, and they're amazing strength and courage, but this doesn't get reflected into power positions. And this is not going to change until the revolution succeeds.
Okay, I know we have one question you want to read from Google+.
Yeah, we are having some audio problems, but Safa El-Shanshori is asking, being in Tahrir Square today, my biggest disappointment was seeing so much political advertisements in the square. What are your thoughts on political agendas being pushed in Tahrir? Magid?
No, I think that's good and that's normal that people are advocating for their political agenda, although having a unified demands is the most important thing at this moment. But I don't blame political parties for saying that we are liberal, because we are already into the political game now. We are already, we had the parliament elections, and we have another elections, and we have presidential elections. So that's very normal.
Won't it divide the popular uprising?
I don't see it as divide, because still the majority have the same demand of stepping down, the SCAF stepping down of the authority. One last point I want to add before briefly. The next battle is the battle of the constitution. This is the most important thing. Although that Copts, maybe women are underrepresented in the parliament, but the question is, will be also underrepresented in the constitution? This is the biggest question that we all should think about in the next few months.
Okay, so I want to continue the conversation on that. And actually, I want to bring up one final tweet from @ElSal92 saying, would a government under Muslim Brotherhood be better than a SCAF-controlled Egypt? And I'm going to ask you to hold your answers, both Egypt and Magid, because we're going to talk about that in the post show. Thank you, Gigi, for being with us. Thank you, Magid. Thanks for our team on Google+. Thank you, Ahmed. We're going to continue the discussion in the post show. But first, on Thursday, is natural gas extraction or fracking poisoning the environment? Before we go, I want to finish over with another clip from The Narcissist, his song, Fly Over Egypt.
I can only see the rain. Won't need no magic carpets. Genie, Aladdin sparking. Heemy bags of the darkest. Nights in the fat of August. Lights from the flash of knowledge. Gave all my cash to college. They pay me no dime. If you pay me no mind. Don't play me your rhyme or slay me no swine. Homie, just back up office. Wrap it up, we packing up, and we'll be back in the morning. What is your revolution? Going in circles daily. Step out your virtual office while we work to get lazy. Having motherless babies. They lift curtains above us. That's why we use our spotlights in the search for their coffins. Love, love. From jailbird fathers, turn us into doves that hail all martyrs. In the light of day, you are more than just a night, seeking for a right of way, asking is it just a fight? I feel the winds of change, everything is still asking is it just a fight? I feel the winds of change, everything is still the same. Even though I feel the sun, I can only see the rain.
Welcome to the Post Show. As we mentioned, that is the Narcissist song Fly Over Egypt. And we're speaking now about what has happened a year after the revolution, the anniversary of the revolution. And I want to come back to you, Magid, with that question that we saw from Twitter. Is the government, or is Egypt better off under a Muslim Brotherhood government than under the SCAF?
Actually, that brings us to a deeper question. Will the SCAF really will let go the power to the Muslims? I don't think so. What we all expect as political academic people, that there will be some kind of share of power between Islamists and the SCAF. So I don't think that they will let the power. If they did, if they deliver the power, still we have very huge fears, because theocracy will never be better than a military dictatorship. It has the same risks for freedom of expression, freedom of religion, freedom of political activities. So it has the same risks, maybe worse actually.
So Gigi, do you feel like Egypt is at risk of a theocracy?
My issue is not theocracy. My fear is that MB, the Muslim Brotherhood, would be another NDP party, that's how I see the Muslim Brotherhood more than the Islamist scare. Really, it's not about the radical Islamist life or way of life that I'm worried about. I'm worried that they're adopting the same economic policies that the NDP has, like with the IMF and the World Bank, and they want to keep all the ways of doing business, which is exactly what this revolution stood against. So that's not my concern about how Islamist or how how religious it would be, but it would be more of the corruption and the economic policies that they would adopt that I definitely stand against, and this revolution stood against.
Gigi, one thing that we didn't really focus much on in the main show on TV was the economy. We talked about security, but obviously governance involves the economy, which is in dire condition. Inflation is in double digits. Unemployment is on the rise. As you know, factories are closing. So hopefully we can get back to that. But before we discuss the economy further, Omar Adli on Google Plus has something he wants to share. Omar?
Yeah. I have the impression, well, I think this is true, that the Muslim Brotherhood or SCAF, they both inherit the older regime, so they want to control the country the same way the older regime did, like Gigi just mentioned. And for that, I also might include the fact that they want to do the same with the economy, so they want to run it the same way. And it's kind of obvious, the idea of philanthropy and going about and sharing goods with the people to just silence them. So that's my impression of what is being going on in Egypt.
So Gigi, as he mentioned, they control, as you know, the military controls around 30% of the economy, which is a very, very substantial amount, and they are clearly keen on holding on to that. Do you see that as a big obstacle in moving forward and bringing tourism back to Egypt and having the economy flourish once again?
Yes, it's not just about reviving the tourism business and all of that. No, this is what corrupted this country for the past 60 years to be exact. I mean, and this is why I see the workers' struggle is where this revolution would be set. It's not going to be just tahrir, and it's going to be just like we did in the 18 days, the public pressure in all of the streets, and then the workers come in, put a hold on the whole country, and that's what will take down
Gigi,
once and
with
for
all
all.
due respect,
And
respect, I don't mean to interrupt you, but perhaps I didn't ask the question properly. A lot of these workers who are unemployed blame the revolutionaries and blame the protesters who are in the streets for halting the economy and making matters worse. So taking to the streets is noble, and perhaps it'll bring change, but isn't it also contributing to the problem?
unfortunately, that's what the media propaganda is getting everyone to believe. But in fact, over the past year, I can't tell you how many of industrial action it has been. To just give you an exact number, in just September alone, there was close to 750,000 of workers on strike in different sectors, calling to cleanse their institutions from corrupted officials, which is not just an economic demand, and they're struggling to make a living. And most of these workers are striking to make their factories work again after they were corruptly privatized in the Mubarak era. So no, they want production to happen, and the one who is stopping production is actually SCAF, who's trying to kill this revolution, because they know the true enemy for them, or who will be able to take down this regime, are the workers who are struggling immensely every day. And we're now facing a third wave of labor strikes that is, I'm sure, gonna bring about hopefully a general strike.
I want to get at a question into Maged actually on this front. I mean, how long can this revolution live, particularly when you're looking at some of these economic problems on the ground? Isn't there a certain degree to which, if some of the economic questions are ameliorated even slightly, people will lose the momentum to continue pushing for reform?
Yeah, you're right, that the SCAF is using the economic hardship that millions of the Egyptian people are suffering now, and they blame the revolution for this economic hardship. And we have to understand also, as a revolution, that 40% of the Egyptian people are are under poverty line, and many of them are earning their daily living day by day. So they are very frustrated because of the revolution. But I cannot say that the revolution is responsible of this. How long? I see persistence and stubborn in the eyes of many of my fellow activists, and I believe that they will continue until we reach some degree of democracy.
Let's go to our community.
Yeah, it's interesting. We have Omar Tawfiq expanding on the economy. Omar, go ahead.
Well, you guys had touched on it, but essentially what I'm getting the feeling is that the people on the ground, the people on the lowest level of the economy are, being hit hard by this. And like you said, they're blaming people. Do you think that this might be one of the biggest inhibitors, as you guys kind of just said, to, going forward, that people can't go out on the streets and they can't protest? They need to make money and sustain themselves right now, and that might ultimately take a toll on the revolution.
Gigi, what's your take?
No, I mean, people are making this revolution happen, whether, they are struggling or not. Their struggle is making this revolution. I find people all the time who work 2-3 jobs, and they stop on their way to work or after work at a protest because they know that this will bring their demands and better their life. At the end of the day, who made this revolution happen are exactly the same people who are suffering the most.
So we have a contrary thought to that. I want to get Sharif in to offer some opinion.
Yeah, Sharif, go ahead.
Yeah, I don't know if it's completely contrary. I completely agree that organized labor and that it makes a huge difference, has made a huge difference, and will make a huge difference. But when you're looking at Egypt with an informal economy, at least 40% of total economy, and you're looking at unemployment rates that we see, this is more, it seems to me, a revolution of the urban poor. I mean, this isn't necessarily going to have the shape of organized labor bringing down the regime. I think it's going to perhaps happen a bit differently.
Okay, so we're running actually low on time, so I want to give Gigi just a few moments, quick response to that.
Yes, of course, it's the urban poor. I never said that. The fact that the labor movement is unorganized, that gives you more of a reason to believe that this is all about economics and restructuring the regime all together for it to be more equitable for the average normal person on the street who's probably doesn't have a job, unemployed, or is in the informal sector.
So on that point, Gigi, I want to close the conversation. There's so much more that can be discussed. And I want to thank you, Gigi. I want to thank you also, Magid, and our amazing community on Google+. We're going to move now to some of the stories that we've been following, and I want to get to Ahmed to give us a little bit of insight on those.
Thank you, Derek. As Derek said, here are some stories that are catching our attention here at the stream. Our first lead is a U.S. newspaper questioning the American government's role in Honduras amid growing violence and corruption. The Miami Herald editorial begins with the withdrawal of U.S. Peace Corps volunteers from Honduras, citing violence and security concerns. A Mexican research group recently named the Honduran city of San Pedro Sula as the most violent city in the world, with 159 homicides for every 100,000 residents. And next, a UK website was wrongly targeted in the campaign against the US Stop Online Piracy Act, or SOPA. Turns out the Scottish Organic Producers Association has the same acronym as the now defunct US bill. The Scottish organization received dozens of unpleasant emails demanding that they stop their activities, and activists also called their laws, quote, stupid. The Scottish group certifies organic food but does not have anything to do with SOPA legislation. They should have Googled it, I think.
They really should have.
That would have helped.
Yeah.
Well, those are our stream leads. If you want more, visit stream.aljazeera.com/leads. Cast your votes for the stories you're interested in and tell us what you want to see on a future show. Derek?
Thank you, Ahmed. And once again, thank you, Majid and Gigi. And thank you, our community, for being with us. This question of the Egyptian revolution is something we've been covering all year, and we're going to continue covering it because it's not just what's happened in Egypt, but they have really spawned something that's happening on a global level. Stay in dialogue with us. Use our Twitter page. Actually use the hashtag AJStream to continue talking with us on this topic and more. As always, we'll see you online.
Or just a plus and minus, they either want to need you. Society cerebral, spiritual cemeteries, where we buried our feelings from people we visit rarely. The television told me we living in scary times. We were blind, I could see it clearly. I wouldn't speak so you could hear me on the beat. Heard they fear me if I was beardy, as long as the fashion can match the passion, then you listen really. If nothing is certain, assertively it serves a purpose. We on the verge of chaos and everything is perfect. Blow my clouds in cursive, searching around an earth deserted.